And the next stage then is to put on the middle hackle, which in this case is hot orange. For the middle hackle on Irish shrimp flies, I find saddles to be best. This is a nice saddle from the Donegal Angling Centre from John McLaughlin, and these aren't long feathers, but they have nice barbs on them, and I usually whenever I'm doing the flies, like the barbs to run a little bit into the tail, and that provides quite a bit of movement in the fly, which is essential for properly fishing Irish shrimp flies. Now, when I'm putting on hackles, I tie them in at the tip. I also do it in 2 stages. This isn't absolutely necessary, but I find that it works well for me. So I usually wax the thread just a little bit in order to secure the feather in place. I'm not actually completing the tying in at this stage. I'm just going to fold the feather, but I find that if I do this, it keeps the feather in place better. Now, take the stalk of the feather in your hackle pliers, and I use the tips of a rounded set of feathers. I just run that down both sides of the feather in order to provide the first stages of the fold. It's not necessary to be too severe with this, because the barbs can come off if you do that. But once you get it folded to that extent, just wet your fingers and pull the barbs of the feather down like that. Now, again, this isn't necessary, but what I do is I take the feather off at this stage. You can just go ahead and turn the feather around the hook, but I take the feather off and I put it in on the opposite side of the hook, because I find that provides a better starting point for the hackle. Just secure your tips of the feather in place, take your hackle pliers, and 2 or 3 turns is usually sufficient. Try to keep the barbs folded as you go, and if any of the little barbs kick, just push them back with your fingers. One turn. Usually when the first turn goes on, the subsequent turns are much easier to put in place. And the nice things about these feathers is that they're tapered. The barbs themselves are tapered so that you get a nice full hot orange colour close to the hook shank, and that's just going to work out just nice. Very little, if any, trimming of the barbs to be done there. So once that's done, then just tie off the stalk, three or four turns, and take that away, and also trim off the feather tip at this stage. Now, if you're really anal, like I am about hackles, you can give it a wee bit of a comb. And also what you can do at this stage is put a couple of turns of thread over the front of the hackle. Now what this does is it forces the hackle back which is the way you want it anyway, but it also helps to secure every fibre of the hackle in place. Take off that little fibre. Now, again, remember that because you're going to be putting a rib in, you need to tie the rib in at this stage before running the thread up to the top of the hook shank, because at this stage we're going to change the thread to black. The front end of the body is black, and we're going to use black seals for there, so the white thread at this stage would not be any use at all. Okay, so again, try and keep your rib underneath the hook and run your thread up on the top. I always like to leave a little bit at the front of the hook for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm always running out of space, but secondly, obviously you need to keep in mind the fact that you're going to put a head on. Now, I'm using a whip finish tool here for simplicity. You can just put in a half hitch knot, just a couple of turns of this tape to secure the thread. And whenever I'm changing the thread, I usually use my hackle pliers, just like that. Cut off the thread that I'm taking away, and then I usually run in the black thread over the top of that. This, of course, will work for any change of thread. If the little tag of white thread that's left is too long, just trim it off. In this case, it looks like it's going to be okay. And once you've got the thread started, just break off the tag of thread. And run your thread down to the orange hackle. Just try as far as possible to keep the white thread covered. Right. Now at this stage we're going to repeat the process that we carried out at the rear end of the fly, and this time we're going to wax the thread and use some black seal spray. Again, it's not necessary to use too much at a time, just a nice fine rope of seal spray. When you're putting on the seal spray, try as far as possible to only turn it in one direction. And we'll just repeat the process a couple of times until we complete the front section. Just one more should be sufficient. And that's the front seals fur applied. And again, just turning your rib 2 turns really at the front of the fly is usually sufficient. Just bear in mind you need to leave enough room for your jungle cock and for your badger hackle at the front. So at this stage we've got the tail, golden pheasant breast feather, the tag, which is medium oval tinsel, the rear body, which is yellow seal's fur with small oval tinsel. You've got the middle hackle of hot orange, and you've got the front body of black seal's fur ribbed with small oval tinsel. And just tie that off.